What if I told you that even the most powerful royal families can have their dark secrets? Born into unimaginable wealth, the daughters of King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia seem to have everything: palaces, privilege, and prestige. But behind the glittering facade of royalty lies a shocking story of isolation, rebellion, and power struggles. How did 4 Saudi princesses end up imprisoned in their palace? What really happened? Were they punished for speaking out? Did they break royal traditions? Or was this part of a bigger power struggle? Stay tuned until the end of the video, because what you're about to hear will completely change how you see this story. King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia ruled from 2005 to 2015. Many saw him as a reformer, a leader trying to modernize his country. He made changes like letting women vote and opening doors for them in education and work. To the world, he looked like he was pushing for progress. But behind that polished public image, his personal life told a very different story. Among his many children were 4 daughters: Sahar, Jawahar, Maha, and Hala. They were born to one of his wives, raised to be smart, educated, and ready to play a role in shaping Saudi Arabia's future. But instead of leading, their lives took a shocking turn. These princesses were confined within palace walls, their freedom stripped away. Wealth and status didn't matter. They became prisoners, completely hidden from the outside world. What could 4 royal daughters do to deserve a life of isolation and confinement? It's hard to imagine, right? Their crime wasn't anything violent or scandalous, it was their voices. Sahar and Jawahar, King Abdullah's eldest daughters, dared to challenge the system. They stood up for women's rights in Saudi Arabia. They sent secret messages and gave interviews to international media, exposing the struggles women faced under the guardianship system, a rule that forces women to get a male relative's approval for almost everything, from traveling to seeing a doctor. But they didn't stop there. They spoke out about the injustices within their own family, calling out the hypocrisy of the royal household. For King Abdullah, this was more than just rebellion. It was personal. It threatened his carefully crafted image as a reformist king and risked shaking the delicate power structure of the monarchy. In Saudi Arabia, the royal family is a political powerhouse. Any dissent from within could weaken the entire system. So their actions weren't seen as bravery, they were seen as betrayal. The punishment was silence. Not through violence, but by locking them away, cutting them off from the world, and ensuring their voices couldn't be heard again. The punishment came swiftly and without mercy. Sahar, Jawahar, Maha, and Hala were confined to a sprawling royal compound in Jeddah. From the outside, it looked like a life of luxury: grand palaces, lush gardens, and all the trappings of royalty. But for the 4 sisters, it was nothing short of a gilded cage. The compound was heavily guarded, ensuring they couldn't leave. Security cameras and staff monitored their every move. Their freedom, once a given, was stripped away. The sisters were allowed no visitors, and any communication with the outside world was strictly controlled. Over time, even their basic needs became tools of punishment. Food and water were rationed, sometimes to the point of deprivation. Their access to medical care was limited, which proved devastating for Hala, the youngest. She had long struggled with mental health issues, reportedly schizophrenia, and under the stress and isolation of confinement, her condition worsened. Instead of compassion or treatment, her suffering became part of their punishment. But the most extraordinary part of their story is how Sahar and Jawahar, despite these impossible conditions, managed to get their voices heard. In 2014, they secretly sent out messages to human rights organizations and even gave an interview to international media. They described their imprisonment as slow torture, claiming they were being punished for refusing to conform to patriarchal expectations. These weren't abstract grievances. They spoke about being denied their right to live as independent adults and called out the inherent contradictions of their father's so-called reforms. How could a king champion women's rights in public while imprisoning his daughters in private. Was this punishment really about safeguarding the family's image? To understand why these sisters were punished so harshly, you have to look at the complex and tightly controlled world of the Saudi royal family. King Abdullah had over 30 children from multiple wives, and that kind of family structure naturally came with rivalries, shifting alliances, and internal power plays. Sahar and Jawahar were breaking unspoken rules about how royals should behave. Their mother, Alanud al-Fayez, made things even more complicated. After her marriage to King Abdullah ended, she fled to the UK and became an outspoken critic of the monarchy. She didn't stay silent. She spoke out against their treatment and called for their release. Her boldness only fueled the tension. For the royal family, the sisters represented a double threat. On one hand, their activism challenged the deeply ingrained norms of Saudi society, where women's rights are a sensitive topic. On the other hand, their defiance risked exposing cracks within the monarchy itself. It was a rebellion against the traditions and rules that kept the royal image intact. The decision to imprison them was about more than silencing their voices. It was a warning to anyone within the royal circle: step out of line and you'll face the consequences. For the monarchy, maintaining control and unity was non-negotiable, even if it meant turning against their daughters. As news of their plight spread, international attention grew. Human rights organizations like Amnesty International and the UN called for their release, condemning their treatment as a violation of basic human rights. Their mother, Alanod, played a crucial role in raising awareness. She used every platform available to bring attention to their imprisonment, describing her daughter's suffering in harrowing detail. But despite the global outcry, the Saudi government remained silent. The official line was that this was a private family matter, a phrase often used to deflect scrutiny in Saudi Arabia. Hala's story is the most heartbreaking of all. As the youngest of the four sisters, she already struggled with mental health issues before their imprisonment, reportedly battling bipolar disorder. But confinement made everything worse. Family friends and activists who tried to help described her as fragile, physically and emotionally. Her cries for help were ignored. In 2021, the world learned of Hala's death under mysterious circumstances. The royal family never released a statement, leaving the details of her death buried in secrecy. Some believe neglect and untreated health issues led to her death, while others suspect something far darker. Was Hala's death a tragic result of her struggles in isolation? Or was it part of a deliberate effort to silence the sisters for good? Sahar and Jawahar had begged for better care for Hala for years. Leaked messages revealed how they felt, powerless, as their youngest sister suffered without proper medical attention. They spoke about the fear and helplessness of watching her decline, knowing they were trapped too. Hala's death became a devastating symbol of the price they were paying for challenging a system that refused to forgive them for speaking out. Why would a king praised as a reformer allow his daughters to suffer like this? King Abdullah was known for championing women's rights, improving their education and work opportunities, and even giving them a voice in politics. So, why would the same man who supported progress turn around and imprison his daughters? It all comes down to control. Abdullah was walking a fine line, trying to modernize Saudi Arabia while keeping its deeply traditional foundations intact. Reforms were acceptable as long as they didn't threaten the monarchy's power. When his daughters spoke out, they crossed that invisible line. For Abdullah, their defiance was a direct challenge to his authority and the kingdom's stability. He may have been a reformer on the surface, but only within limits that kept his control intact. This raises the question, was King Abdullah truly a reformer, or just another ruler focused on protecting his legacy at any cost? When Abdullah passed away in 2015, some hoped his successor, King Salman, might address the sisters' situation. But under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, things have only tightened. MBS has promoted himself as a modernizer, introducing reforms like letting women drive. But these changes come with a darker side, a crackdown on activists, journalists, and even other royals. As for Sahar, Jawahar, and Maha, their fate remains a mystery. Are they still trapped in confinement, or has their silence become permanent? The secrecy surrounding their lives only leaves us with more questions. What do you think happened to King Abdullah's daughters? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story eye-opening and want to hear more about hidden truths, power struggles, and the untold histories of royal families, don't forget to like this video. Subscribe so you never miss out on future videos that dive deep into these fascinating, often controversial topics. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for what's coming next.